ordinary Russians meet. This admiration of Burns as a Democrat, perhaps even as a socialist, has been an important reason for his popularity outside Russia too. In 1919, German communists attempted a revolution in Germany, taking advantage of the hardship and chaos widespread at the end of the First World War. When the revolution's leader, Karl Liebknecht, was eventually beaten to death by the army, he died with a copy of Robert Burns's poems in his pocket. And his last words are said to have been, "It's coming yet for all that, the man to man, the world o'er, will brothers be for all that." I've already mentioned Burns's support for the French Revolution, which broke out in 1789 during his lifetime. This has won him admiration from radicals and revolutionaries across the world ever since. In his poem, "Why Should We Idly Waste Our Prime?" we find the following explosive lines, for example. "The guillotine on piers shall wait, and knights shall hang in garters. Those despots long have trod us down, and judges are their engines. Such wretched minions of a crown demand the people's vengeance. Today it is theirs, tomorrow we shall don the cup of liberty." Strong stuff. As with his simple democratic farmer image in Russia, this image of the radical revolutionary can also be questioned, of course. Did Burns not later join the Royal Dumfries Volunteers to defend Britain against a possible invasion by France? And did he not write his patriotic poem, "Das haughty Gaul Invasion Threat"? But nevertheless, there are many people across the world who see Burns as a revolutionary. It's another reason for his popularity around the world. Even if it's inaccurate, it's another reason. Another reason for Burns's popularity is the simple directness of his verse. To people in lands where poetry had traditionally been of airy-fairy intellectual images, Burns's straight-from-the-shoulder style was much more exciting and interesting and different. The Chinese writer Zhu Guozhen illustrates this by comparing Scots Wha Hae with a similar poem by the famous Chinese poet Du Fu. So he quotes the lines, "By oppression's woes and pains, by your sons in servile chains, we will drain our very veins, our dearest veins, but they shall be free. Lay the proud usurpers low, tyrants fall in every foe, liberties in every blow, let us do or die." He compares that with Outlook in Spring by Du Fu, which says, "The nation is sundered, the mountains, the rivers remain, the cities spring, trees and grass deep. Touched by time's passing, flowers drip tears. Pain at this separation, birds jar the heart. Beacons of war burn now into the third month. One note from home, I'd give lumps of gold. White hair scratched even thinner, not enough left for a hairpin." Now Zhu says both poets are dealing with national affairs, but Burns's lines rush along like a torrent. The poet is delivering a resolute and encouraging speech, calling on his compatriots to rise in arms for liberty and a happy life and future. Du Fu starts his poem in a slow and pensive vein. He's just brooding over the fate of his country, bewailing the times, sighing mournfully, but there is no stirring call to arms, no hope for the future. According to Zhu, this is typical of China's patriotic classical poets. He says, "We can hardly find anything in hundreds of poems of the Tang dynasty that is so passionate, inspiring and straightforward as Burns's verses." To the Chinese, often ruled in the past by foreign emperors and foreign powers, this straight and simple love of liberty and peace was a revelation. For this reason, one of the most popular poems of Robert Burns in China is "The Tree of Liberty." "With plenty o' sic trees, I trow, the world would live in peace, man. The sword would help to mak a plough, the din of war would cease, man. Like brethren in a common cause, we'd on each other smile, man. And equal rights and equal laws would gladden every isle, man." The Chinese love that. Of course, nowhere is Burns more widely admired and celebrated than in the USA. Americans may speak of Bobby Burns and sing "For the Sake" of Auld Lang Syne with a Z. But the fact is that Burns is huge in the USA. Recently, an American blogger wrote, "When the Scottish immigrants left Scotland, they took what little money they had farming tools, their guns, cooking utensils, seeds from the garden, their Bibles, and the writing of Robert Burns. Most of them knew they would never return. In the long winter evenings, in those log cabins on the prairies, the father would read from Burns, and then the Bible, and then prayers before retiring. So children were raised with Burns. Today, the Robert Burns Association of North America brings together organisations from all over the continent. The Schahalian Scottish Heritage Society in Calgary, the St Andrew's Society of Williamsburg, Virginia, the Robert Burns Club at San Diego, the Bonnie Jean Burns Club in Houston, and many more. Well, it's not surprising that Scots-Americans celebrate Burns. If we're looking at Burns' appeal to non-Scots across the world, we find the same in America. The Burns Club of Atlanta, for example, was founded in 1896 by Joseph Jacobs of German-Jewish birth. Incidentally, in 1911, this same club even built a replica of Burns' cottage at Alloway, which itself is now listed on the National Register of Historic Places in the USA. There are many more examples of non-Scottish Americans who admire Burns. The great American essayist Ralph Waldo Emerson, who had no Scottish blood in his veins, wrote of Burns, the American Declaration of Independence, the French Rights of Man, and the Marseillaise are not more weighty documents in the history of freedom than the songs of Burns. In 1937, the American novelist John Steinbeck, of German-Irish parents, published his latest novel of Mice and Men, which of course is taken from the second last verse of To a Mouse, where it says the best laid schemes of mice and men, gang after glade. So he's aware of Burns. He uses a moment, not even a prominent bit, but a line somewhere down the poem as the title of his book. In 1951, the American author J.D. Salinger similarly has his central figure, the young boy Holden Caulfield, misremembering Burns' poem Coming Through the Rye in his novel Catcher in the Rye, a book about the loss of childhood innocence, borrowing imagery from Burns' description of illicit sex in a field of rye. Salinger's father was Lithuanian Jewish. In 2008, when Bob Dylan was asked which lyric or verse had had the greatest impact on his life, he replied, "My love is like a red, red rose." Dylan, the child of Lithuanian and Ukrainian Jewish immigrants, chose Burns. Many Americans admire Burns for his support during the American War of Independence, which began in 1775 when Burns was a young man. Burns blatantly supported the Americans against his own government, a dangerous thing to do in a Scotland full of government spies. George Washington, the Commander-in-Chief of the American Revolutionary Army, later of course the first President of the USA, was also toasted by Burns in his Ode for George Washington's Birthday, in which he described King George III as a tyrant. In his Ballad of the American War, he admiringly wrote of the rebellious Americans as follows: "Then up the gat, the maskin pat, and did the seed, and in the sea did jaw, man, and did nae less in full congress than quite refuse our law, man." And he's saying this admiringly. You can imagine why the Americans love Burns. Another aspect of American admiration for Burns is his support for the anti-slavery movement, an extremely risky and controversial stance, only just beginning to be voiced in his lifetime. So when he penned A Slave's Lament, he was going out on a limb at a time when Scottish merchants were heavily involved in the highly profitable business of transporting Africans to the Caribbean and America. He writes, "It was in sweet Senegal that my foes did me enthrall, for the lands of Virginia, Ginia, oh, torn from that lovely shore, and must never see it more. Alas, I am weary, weary, oh." You should read the whole poem, it's powerful stuff. Similarly, in A Man's a Man for A' That, some writers believe that the line, "the rank is but the Guinea stamp," refers to the branding of slaves in our colony, Guinea. In other words, that rank doesn't make you anything by itself, any more than the branding of someone as a slave. In its day, this was an electrifying message. In 1850, at a New York gathering, the abolitionist and ex-slave Frederick Douglass said, "Though I am not Scots and I have a coloured skin, I am proud to be among you, and that I learned from Robert Burns. A man's a man for all that, let not astray that come it may, as come it will for all that, the man to man, the world ours, shall brothers be for all that." A black ex-slave is reciting this in New York. Some commentators have suggested that Burns's writings may even have helped push Abraham Lincoln, who later abolished slavery in the 1860s, towards his anti-slavery beliefs. I wouldn't go as far as that, but it's certainly true that Lincoln knew Burns' work very well and attended Burns' suppers. Even as a child, he was apparently able to recite Holy Willie's Prayer, Address to the Deil, Bonnie Jean, and so on by heart. And when wooing his Scottish-born wife, Mary Todd, he is said to have sung "My love is like a red, red rose." Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln's official presidential biography stated in 1865 that when practicing law before his election to Congress, a copy of Burns was his inseparable companion on the circuit, and this he pursued so constantly that it is said that he now has by heart every line of his favourite poet. Similarly inspired by Burns was the celebrated African-American author and activist Maya Angelou. Whilst teaching in Georgia at the height of the civil rights movement in the 1960s, she used Burns's poems to inspire her young black students with a sense of pride in who they were and what they were fighting for. Later she recalled how they were just blown away by the slave's lament, in which Burns conveyed so vividly the anguish of the captured people in Senegal. Finally, I turn to Mexico. I wonder how many people here know that it was Burns who coined the expression gringo, which Mexicans came to use for the American white men. According to one source, during the siege of the Alamo in 1836, there was a small contingent of Scottish soldiers fighting with the besieged. They were very fond of a certain song by Robert Burns, "Green grow the rashes o." This line, "Green grow the rashes o," is repeated twice in each chorus. The chorus itself is repeated 5 times in the song, so therefore "Green grow the rashes o" is repeated 10 times in each performance of the song. Apparently the Scots soldiers sang this song constantly to keep their spirits up, and it's said that the Mexican troops outside, hearing green grow" being repeated over and over again, christened the defenders of the Alamo Gringos. No, I don't believe it either. No. However, it certainly is true that Robert Burns is admired and celebrated all around the world, as much by non-Scots as by those from his native land. I can't think of any other poet or even literary person of any kind from any country who is such a worldwide phenomenon. There are 180 statues to Burns around the world. After Columbus and Queen Victoria, Burns has the most statues to any non-religious figure in the world. His influence can be found everywhere. There is now a Robert Burns International Humanitarian Award, given by Scotland to any group or individual who has saved, improved or enriched the lives of others through self-sacrifice, selfless service, hands-on charitable or volunteer work. Recipients have included an anti-nuclear campaigner, a civil rights activist, a Chernobyl children's relief worker, a relief worker in Afghanistan, and so on. In 2005, for example, Archbishop Pius Nkubi of Zimbabwe, a black African and a fierce critic of Robert Mugabe, won this award. I'm sure that Burns would have approved thoroughly. He would have loved the way in which his poetry has reached out and helped to bring people together. His songs have similarly spread across the world. A translation of "My Heart is in the Highlands" was adopted as the marching song of the Chinese resistance fighters in the Second World War, for example. "Auld Lang Syne" is the 3rd most popular song in English in the world, after "Happy Birthday" and "Jolly Good Fellow." It is played at zebra crossings in Japan when it's time to cross, and in Japanese stores when they're about to close. It was played by the American Federal Army to mark the end of the Civil War. It is featured in at least 170 Hollywood movies, including one in which it's sung to the original correct tune. Could we wish for anything better than a verse of Broad Scots being recognised every year all over the planet as a tribute to lasting friendship and personal connection? Some years ago I was at a talk table in which the immortal memory was given by Tom Sutherland, one of the Beirut hostages. And he said in the 6 years that he was a hostage, every year he held a burn supper in whatever cellar he was in that time, chained to whatever radiator, with whatever scrap of bread he had, and with whoever happened to be in the same room with him. But he held a burn supper in a cellar somewhere in Beirut every year for 6 years. And he recited all the poems and so on. I remember Billy Kay telling us that, the writer and broadcaster, telling us that one time he was in Penang when he realised it was the 25th of January. So he got all the backpackers in Penang and made them attend a burn supper on the beach. He held it in Penang. This week, people of many creeds, languages, religions and nationalities will meet at suppers in 1,000 distant places around the world to celebrate the work of Robert Burns. They may admire different parts of the man and for different reasons, but by coming together at a burn supper wherever they are, they will be taking a step towards that world which Burns dreamt of when he wrote that man to man the world o'er will brothers be for all that. So, ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to rise, and with countless others at such gatherings all across the world, please join with me to toast the immortal memory of Robert Burns.
Robert Burns. Great, that was great. Thanks very much indeed. Why you have not, with the British delegation negotiating with Michel Barnier, after all of that, I certainly do not know. That can be next week's talk. Next on the agenda, we're going to get a song from Sarah Aldred. We're very lucky to have Sarah with us tonight for no reason other than she's really very good. And I can say no more than that. Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah Aldred.
Thank you very much. I thought the song I'm going to start with for the evening, I'm going to do one at the moment, you'll have your comfort break after that, is composed in August, and it's one of Burns's early works, and it's a really beautiful tune that's a delight to sing, and the words are equally beautiful. They paint 1,000 pictures and show Burns's love of nature. So it's composed in August. Now westland winds and slaughtering guns bring autumn's pleasant weather. The moorcock springs on whirring wings among the blooming heather. Now waving green wide o'er the plain delights the weary farmer, and the moon shines bright when I rove at night to muse upon my charmer. The petric loos the fruitful fells, the plover loos the mountains, the woodcock haunts the lonely dells, the soaring heron the fountains. Through lofty groves the cushion roves, the path o' man to shun it. The hazel bush o'erhangs the thrush, the spreading thorn, the linnet. Thus every kind their pleasure find, the savage and the tender. Some social join, the leagues combine, a solitary wonder. Avaunt away the cruel sway, tyrannic man's dominion, the sportsman's joy, the murdering cry, the fluttering gory pinion. But Peggy dear, the evening's clear, thick flies the skimming swallow, the sky is blue, the fields in view, all fading green and yellow. Come, let us stray our gladsome way to view the cherubs o' nature, the rustling corn, the fruited thorn, and every happy creature. We'll gently walk and sweetly talk till the silent moon shines clearly. I'll grasp thy waist and fondly pressed swear how I love thee dearly. Not vernal showers to budding flowers, not autumn tea the farmer, say dear can be as thou to me, my fair, my lovely chairman.
Thank you very much, Sarah. That was as expected. That was fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Now, the much promised comfort break is now upon us. This is not compulsory by any manner of means, because I want the evening to carry on with a good pace, but we're going to have a 5-minute comfort break, not 6 minutes, not 7 minutes, and definitely not 8 minutes, a 5-minute comfort break, and we will start back again in 5 minutes. We'll just wait for that. You've enjoyed that comfort break, so the reminder is there's the one coming up after Dorothy, so you can time your whatever it is you want to time. Next, we have the toast to the lassies, and I'm very happy to welcome to deliver that this evening Harry Morton. Harry is a friend of David Chisholm's. He's a Keen Hill walker, a Munro bagger, as well as being a retired police officer where he was in the underwater unit. Harry came to the police after a childhood in the circus, where his father was an incontinent trapeze artist. Yes, it was his job to warm up the audience.
Come forward, darling. Approach.
It's funny that Fiona should appear at this point, because Fiona said to Harry the other night, "Are you listening to me?" And Harry thought, that's a funny way to start a conversation. To deliver the toast to the lassies, I'm very pleased to call upon Harry Morton.
Well, I was asked to do this at very short notice, as was my colleague on the left here, Dorothy. we both got very, very short notice to appear tonight. So you'll forgive me if I've missed you anybody's names and jokes about them. Most of it's about Fiona. the only woman I've really loved in the whole of my life, apart from my mother. So, I'll start off with, good evening, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, or should I say, members of the jury. The next few minutes will determine whether I had done justice to the lassies. As I said earlier, my appearance tonight is attributed to the organiser of this evening's entertainment, Mr. David Chisholm, a former friend of mine, whose invitation to speak has caused me many sleepless nights and quite a few visits to the toilet. Thank you, Chiz, ex-pal. An old uncle of mine gave me some tips in public speaking many years ago. He said, stand up, speak up, sit down and shut up. So I'll start off with the old cliche. Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking, I can go on to say that I am unaccustomed because I don't get the chance to speak. My wife, Fiona, says everything for me. My big contribution in any exchange is that well-known phrase used by lots of men. Yes, dear. Burns says, and I quote, all nature swears the lovely dears, her noblest works she classes o. Her prentice hand she tried on man, and then she made the lassie so. I remember when I first met Fiona. I'm not going to say what I usually say. She said she liked big men who kept in shape. Well, I says, I'm fairly big, and well, round is a shape as well. Round is a shape, no? I was very fit at school, and my favourite was the walking race. I won it 3 years running. I told Fiona I was a real wit. She says, ah, well, you're half right. But in the end, love is blind, and since then, we have gone on from strength to strength, and we've been happily married for 3 years. The other 10 years are questionable. An old saying goes, marriage is like a deck of cards. All it takes is 2 hearts and a diamond. After all these years, now I'm looking for a club and a spade. On our wedding night, well, just getting ready for bed, you understand. Picture the scene. Well, don't picture it too hard. I says to Fiona, darling, I want you to try on my underpants. So she pulls them up, and they go way up past her belly button. When she lets them go, they immediately fall to the floor. So she says, they're far too big for me. So I says, that's how it's going to be in the marriage. I will be wearing the pants. So she thought about this for a wee while. And then she says, why don't you try on my pants? I said, okay. But when I tried, I couldn't get them up past my knees. So I says, I can't get into your pants. She didn't say anything, and the look on her face said all. That just says,